Welcome to Big Game Hunter, and welcome to another round of Career Coach Office Hours. I'm doing this twice a week now. Fridays at 9 a.m. Eastern, Tuesdays at noon Eastern, where I answer questions from people who are job hunters or who are hiring, managing and leading, dealing with some workplace-related issue. And today, all the questions I received in advance of the show were about job search. Tuesday was different. It was the first time I was doing it on Tuesday. I had a few questions about hiring. And I'll just say before I get going on Q&A, if you've got a question for me today, you can put it into chat and I'll try and get to it. And the long and the short of it is I've got a pretty full schedule on this particular show, and I'll do my best to get to you. In the future, though, if you have a question that comes to mind, email it to me at thebiggamehunter@gmail.com. In the subject line, put the term office hours so I know what it's about. I'll try and respond to it before the show, but if I can't, minimally I'll address it during Career Coach Office Hours, okay? And I can't wait till I get my new chair tomorrow. This one is kind of worn out, not really providing a lot of back support. I notice I'm kind of crooked. So next week, hopefully the new chair is in and I'm more comfortable. That's the best way I could put it. So I've got a number of questions from people that I'm going to be covering today. And the first one is, why do some recruiters or employers constantly repost job ads? The reason's really very simple, and you have to understand how job boards work in order to understand why they're doing this. When they post a job, it's in the number one position. It is on top. It is like on Google, the first couple of listings get a lot of attention. But as time progresses, it drops further down and no one sees it and they don't get responses. As a result, they are frequently reposting it because the job is still open. Also, in order to get it to the top spot again. So they may be refreshing the ad or making a small change to the ad. Like, back when I did recruiting, the small change we'd make is skip a couple of lines at the end of the job description and put a period there. And that would indicate a change, and it went to the top. And that also worked for resumes. So what they're trying to do is get the attention of job hunters so they get more responses because they haven't settled on anyone yet. And that's why they're doing it. So that was the first question. The second one, I've edited this one down. And this is a person who works for a U.S. government subcontractor, and they've been relieved of their duties, but they're still on payroll for another 6 weeks. What should they tell people with whom they're interviewing? If I tell them what happened, I've got some partial responsibility. But if I don't tell them and they find out, they'll hold it against me. And then there's a subplot here where there's a new manager that joined and initially thought of them as their favorite and eliminated everyone else. There got to be a point where he casually mentioned his husband, like I said, his husband, and her attitude toward him changed, and she started to push him out the door. So he went from favored status to one of the people being pushed out, and there was someone else who became favored. Now, let me start with the second part first, which is it's really hard to prove that the fact that you made that statement caused that change of behavior. The one thing I would start off by doing is getting all my reviews in place so that I have them, and thus if there's any question about performance, you can always point to the reviews saying, my performance has never been an issue, and certainly nothing has changed. You've decided you want to keep someone else on board. I can respect that, but I want to be clear. If you give me a bad reference, there's going to be a lawsuit, not just simply against the agency, but against you personally, because you went out of your way to cause me a problem. Now, I know not everyone wants to say or do something like that, but sometimes you have to look someone square in the eye and make a threat to get them to comply. Now, the threat can be something simple. I want a very positive recommendation from you. That's if you have if you have reason to believe that they won't provide a good recommendation. You want to make sure that the firm that you're working for, which is a subcontractor to a primary contractor, everyone's saying wonderful things about you. If you're asked whether you're still there, still employed, you say, yeah, I'm still on payroll, but it's time for me to go. Why is that? Well, frankly, I'm being pushed out the door. They need to cut some heads, and a new person who's a woman has picked a woman and not me. So I'll just simply say, I've done great work. I can show you all my reviews. At the right time, I'll introduce you to my references. And I'll just simply say, it's clearly time for me to go. So that becomes the way that you explain it. Is it perfect? No, it's obviously not perfect. But what it does do is you're saying it's time for me to go. And hopefully that gets by. And you can talk in terms again of the assignment is ending, they're cutting back on some heads, I'm not going to be kept. I'm getting an unusual amount of severance from this firm, like they're giving me 6 weeks. Obviously, in the past, they've given no severance to people, but they think I've done a good job and they're trying to be gracious. And make sure you prep everyone what you want them to say so that this way you don't run into a problem with your references. That's scenario number 2. Number 3. Is LinkedIn still a professional networking platform, or has it turned into just another social media site? Now, I was on LinkedIn among the first 10,000 members on LinkedIn, and LinkedIn has evolved. It's become much broader than it once was. It used to be the core networking stuff. You had a profile, and people could search and find your profile. You could stay in contact with people, and it was a professional network exclusively. Well, now there are groups. Now you can write. There's a feed. There's a wall. There's people who post lots of different things there. Some of it is designed to be uplifting and motivational in order to draw attention to themselves. People share things that they've read. They share things that they've written elsewhere. There's a blog, there's video, there's stories. A lot of those sound like traditional social networks these days, like a Facebook does or an Insta does, but it isn't. They tend to almost exclusively be professional postings rather than things related to, hey, hot date on Friday night, or went to a great restaurant, which is what Facebook is more about. Facebook rarely gets into the business side. They just don't have that sort of pull. They've got a job board built in there, and they now have their own version of a blogging platform that they haven't fully rolled out, but it's still a social network. That's not the case with LinkedIn. More than 90% of the content there will be professional content. To me, that's what makes it a professional networking platform. Next question. Should you disclose to potential employers during the application or interview process that you're planning to go to graduate school in the next few years? I'm going to give you a simple answer and then an explanation. No! Don't tell them that unless it's beneficial to them that you're going to grad school. For example, in an interview, any plans on going to graduate school? Because we like people who've got a PhD or a master's. Oh, yeah, I've been looking into that. I've been talking to such and such schools. I can't swing the money right now, but the plan is in a couple of years, I'll have the money because I don't want to incur debt. And yeah, I'm thinking about going to grad school. I have it kind of narrowed down to 3 universities for programs and such. I haven't made a decision yet, but if you have recommendations, I'd love to hear from you about what your experience was with these schools or with other schools that you might point me to. And that opens up into a friendlier conversation that will serve you well. So, by all means, raise the subject, but don't raise the subject unless they raise it first, which means they want someone who has the advanced degree that you may not have. So, normally, no. If they ask, yes. Okay? Here we go. Another question. I told you I got a lot today. Should you just, I already did that one. Have you ever accepted a job offer only to bitterly regret taking the job later once you'd started? What happened? Now, not for me personally, but I know many people have, because I used to be a recruiter before I transitioned into coaching a few years ago. And that was a common lament. This isn't the job I was hired for, or these aren't the people I expected to be working with. I joined, my boss is different. There's all sorts of explanations for it. But invariably, the primary ones are the position was misrepresented to me. Why does that happen? Well, just like you're enhancing the truth during the course of your interview, and I say enhancing the truth, you're not being completely honest about everything, are you? Of course not. Employers are the same way. And they talk about a great opportunity with a terrific team of people. Have I mentioned we're like family around here? Yeah, family in the holiday movies where people are throwing things at one another and getting into fights. That kind of family, but not the one that you thought it was. And thus, firms hide stuff from potential hires. Statistically, employers have buyer's remorse, like they regret having hired you within 18 months of you joining. That's a very common statistic. And thus, well, not thus, but it's a common statistic, and job hunters have it even sooner. Why does that happen? And I'm going to add on a couple of reasons. Number one is you didn't ask enough questions on the interview to understand what their expectations of you were. You didn't really get a good idea of what the work environment was like and what their expectations of you were going to be. It's a lot of stuff that falls on them withholding and you not asking. And thus, you get blindsided by situations. Now, it's impossible for you or they to tell you everything, right? It's just never enough time. But, interviewing is like dating. And at the beginning, everyone's on good behavior. And the longer you interview, the more their guard gets lower and more your guard gets lower. It's why people can go on 5 or 6 interviews to be turned down. And you wonder, what did I do wrong? And what you did was you opened up too much. And that winds up being the kiss of death for you. Same thing on their side. They're not completely truthful, and the result winds up being that you wind up in a situation that you didn't think was going to be there, and surprise, it is. You feel duped, disappointed, or business changes, and they've got to do something completely different, and their expectations of you have to change on a dime. It happens. Yes, you can try and persevere. Yes, you can leave. No one likes the second choice, but sometimes that's the right one. And sometimes it isn't. I don't know your specific circumstances, but I tried to explain what happens when people get bitterly disappointed. Is it a bad idea to give a work sample to interviewers even though they did not ask for it? Yes, it's a very bad idea. Why is that? Because you're being pushy. You're foisting it on them, and they're not ready to see it. And they may never be ready to see it. That's about you and your ego going, hey, I've done some great work. And you know what? I think you'll really like it. If they wanted to see your work, they'd ask you to bring it with them. And you can, if it's an easier explanation, at a certain point in the process, say, I happen to be carrying a work sample with me, and I can show you something that I did and make a point that way. But generally, I don't encourage that, because the fact of the matter is, if they wanted to see a work sample, they would have asked you to bring it. They didn't, and thus don't push it on them. How would you professionally state why you no longer want to go to a job interview? So I'm going to assume you've had one or more interviews at a company, and you're now in a situation where you know enough to be able to say, I don't think so. And thus, you want to back out gracefully. What do? What do you say? Well, what you say or email is going to be something along the lines of, thanks for making the time to evaluate and assess me. I want you to know I was impressed by everyone I met with, but I'm close to an offer, or I've received another offer from a different firm that I'm going to say yes to. I really thank you a lot. It's been wonderful getting to know you, and I hope, well, perhaps in the future we might be able to meet again, and I might be able to help you with a job search. Be gracious at those times, and yes, back away, because why invest the time in interviewing at a company that you have no interest in joining? Get out of the situation. Be friendly. Don't be rude, and don't throw anyone under the bus at the employer or the firm that you're walking away from by being hypercritical. Okay? I believe this is the last question. Yes, I like this one. How should I reach out to the hiring manager after being rejected for the first time? Okay, you were turned down, and now you want to contact them again. Why? Why do you want to do that? What is it about this firm that makes you a glutton for punishment, and that you're going to go back into a situation and go, hey, consider me. I know you turned me down 2 weeks ago, but I think I can really do this job. It doesn't work that way. So, yes, you can send them an email like mine, but the idea is there's no reason to recontact them. You got rejected. You weren't qualified. Why are they suddenly going to change their mind? Because you want them to? No. What they want to do is solve a problem, and now you're turning into a stalker. It's not a good look for you or for anyone. Don't do it. I'm Jeff Altman. I hope you've enjoyed today's show. I'll be back on Tuesday with more. If you're watching on YouTube, click the like button, share the video. LinkedIn, same thing. Like it, share it. Do something that lets people know that it was worthwhile. I also want to mention that if we're not already connected on LinkedIn, you can send a connection request to me at linkedin.com/IN/the big game hunter. Mention that you saw the video. I love knowing that I'm helping some folks. And once we're connected, your network is going to grow a lot, because mine tends to be a lot larger than other people's. Also want to say, if you're interested in one-on-one coaching or a lot more information, my website is thebiggamehunter.us. You can go to the blog and go exploring, or you can schedule time for a free discovery call or schedule time for coaching. I would love to help. And as you're making a decision about me, I just want to remind you, look at the recommendations I have on LinkedIn. They are glowing recommendations. They do a lot of good work convincing people to hire me. And many people have told me that, I wasn't sure, and then I saw what other people wrote about you. It was phenomenal. So check me out on LinkedIn, connect with me there. Also visit my website and schedule a free discovery call or schedule time for coaching. I'd love to help. I hope you have a terrific day, and most importantly, be great. Take care.